Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Mr. Sydney Brownwood.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to this, the Lardy Oddcast, and not just any Oddcast. It's the Happy New Year Oddcast.
Happy New Year! Happy New Year!
And once again, we're gathered in the Great Hall at Lard Island. Apologies for the smell of fresh paint, but we've just had the decorators in after an unfortunate incident with the Lard Island peasants. Some gin, some pitchforks, and a burning torch. Yes. But fear not, order has been restored, with just a few singe marks around the edges.
Thank God for Freddie.
Yeah, absolutely.
The head of security.
The head of security. Freddie did his job. Those peasants won't be back.
Not without any more bite marks, anyway. And I've taken the day off from Panto at the Pavilion in Rill, where I've been stunning audiences with my widow Twanky.
You haven't. With your what?
With my widow Twanky.
You haven't had your widow Twanky out
Seats
again, have
are
you?
still available at cut prices.
Running through to the 5th of January, I believe.
Indeed so.
Yeah.
And I've been joined in the Lard Island studio by the ugly sisters of wargaming, Rich and Nick. Ladies, welcome to the Oddcast. How was Christmas for you both?
Ugly sisters.
Right.
Who writes your scripts? What, Dick Emery, is it?
Okay.
You are awful, Sid.
No school like old school.
No, okay. Yes.
How was it for you, darling?
It was wonderful. Did you get to go to the ball?
I'm sorry, I can't get over the ugly sisters of Wargame. It's very funny.
We're all professionals here.
Yeah, truly.
Nick.
I'm sure there are other handles.
Yeah.
There's worse things you've done.
Christmas was wonderful. Thank you, Sydney. Really, really nice time. It's great to actually step away from everything, isn't it? And
It is nice.
feast yourself on all things good.
All things feastable.
Yeah, fantastic turkey.
That's good.
Very nice. A few bottles of red to wash that down with, and yeah, good family times. Lots of TV.
Looking well on it.
Yeah, it's a nice time, isn't it? Just to step away, and some wargamey stuff for presents as well. Are we talking about that? Do you want me to tell you about what?
In a moment. We'll see how was Christmas for you first, Richard?
Yeah, very relaxing, really. Just an opportunity to chill out a bit.
Busy year last year.
It's quite nice when I'm able to get away from work, because actually when I'm away from work, I can get on with the work that I can't do when I'm at work. So things like a lot of reading, a lot of planning of things like pint-sized campaigns. I have to book time in my diary away from work in order to get those things done. And it has been really productive. I've got some a really nice 1940 campaign for Holland coming out, which is quite jolly. And I've been doing a bit of work on my Rumble in the Jungle.
Always good to have a rumble in the jungle.
Yes.
And it's coming along. Those buildings I got you, they're sort of looking good. They're not yet painted, but you've assembled them. Can be said for most of the things you've bought over the last 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I have got enough MDF buildings to build myself a small house.
Just make sure mine get done first.
Well, as you can see there, I just need to. I'm trying to decide what to do on the roof, other than fiddle on it, to make them.
You got the joke in first.
Yeah, I thought I'd better get there before you. To make them look a bit more jungly, because sometimes, MDF is great for certain things, and especially making buildings that are made of wood or plant fibre. But I just want to try and do something a bit different with the roof. So I'm having a bit of a dabble there, but no, they're well on the way, as are my Australian and Japanese armies, and I'm doing a bit of reading and research into Hong Kong, which was a bit of a horrible situation, but quite interesting forces of volunteer troops and things like that, which are quite worth remembering.
Very much so. And Nick, you've been doing a bit of wargaming, did you say, or mainly modelling?
Yeah, I've been
you play your game I bought you?
Yeah, well,
With your mother-in-law?
No, not with the mother-in-law, but family's been into games. Family's into board games. My middle daughter is quite keen on boardy games, and we're slowly playing some which are more strategically focused, but I can't quite get them onto full-blown war games yet. So I haven't played the Holland 44 game with them.
How many daughters you got now?
I've got 2.
And you've got a middle one?
I have my...
That's a great accomplishment.
She's my middle child. My eldest daughter. Right. So we've been playing some family games, which has been good, but also they, because they've grown up now, it's Christmas is a bit less intense, a bit more relaxed.
Christmas is time to invade Holland.
Yeah, I haven't got them on that one yet. I've been able to play some ball games in the past with my son, but he's not really. Can't really light his fire yet.
Not that sort of chap.
No, he's not.
More cricket than ball games.
More cricket, and of course the Big Bash is as Sydney. I see your eyes lit up there. But the Big Bash, of course, is the Australian T20 tournament, and that's on in the mornings.
Yeah.
That's at the moment. That's really.
Turning
him on,
yeah, good.
But it's I love this time of year always.
Yeah, it is always good. Yeah, it's the time of year when I always think, time to do things to excess, and actually when it gets round to it,
Like
you don't really want excess. You actually just want to chill out, don't you?
Yeah, very much so. And
I can do excess all the rest of the year.
Certainly do work hard at that.
Yeah.
And any more wargaming presents apart from the ones that we bought each other? I bought you 2. Anyway,
actually, unusually for me, I got some airborne jeeps from for Christmas. Some of the Warlord airborne jeeps for the British Powers, which should go really nicely. It kicked me off into a market garden again.
That's good.
And actually, a really good book. It's wargamey, but on a kind of on the periphery of what we normally talk about. But it's an excellent book on red teaming.
Right.
Which is again your eyes lit up there, Sid. But this concept of sort of strategic, more corporate in as much as it's testing your strategy and putting applying the red team approach to gaming, which I'm sure will come into some of the developments and thoughts that we have on our own games. So
what does that involve? Screaming and panicking at work when everything's going to
no, just looking through the enemy's eyes a bit more. As we know, the enemy always has a card to play, and you can learn lots about scenarios and games by applying that philosophy, I think. So we'll use some of that, I'm sure. And a good book also on the same colour, red. A book called Red Platoon. I don't know if you've seen it. If you've got Netflix, there's a series on Netflix which is Medal of Honor, which is about the US Medal of Honor, funny enough. And it's each programme is about 45 minutes long, but it's a sort of drama documentary of how that person won their Medal of Honor. And there's one of the guys there was attacked at Combat Outpost Keating, I think it's called, which is in northern Afghanistan, in I think 2009.
Right.
And 2 Medals of Honor were won there during this attack by the Taliban. And one of the guys that came out that's written a book. And I was watching this program with my son, and actually he got me this guy's book for Christmas. I haven't read it yet. No. Just a paperback. Red Platoon it's called. That should be an interesting read.
Yeah, a lot of the accounts coming out of Afghanistan, not just the British ones, but the American ones, the Canadian ones. I mean, they've always been really interesting to read. I mean, I do feel that unfortunately the full story isn't always there because you're getting one side of it as opposed to the insurgency side, but there's a lot of interesting things and small unit actions and lessons in all of those accounts. And I know we pass them around amongst ourselves, but they're always interesting to read. And it's kind of like the contemporary war of our generation.
Clint Romashar, I think his name is. He's the sergeant who won. He actually one of the guys who did win the Medal of Honor in that action. Yeah. So that should be good. Looking forward to reading that. How about you guys?
You don't win medals; you get awarded them. It's not a lottery, mate. Right. Okay. I got nothing. Actually.
Sorry, Dad.
I got nothing for Christmas. I never get anything for Christmas. I don't really want anything for Christmas, so
good. Let's move on then.
My family live up to that. So no, there's nothing I can tell you. I just, for me, Christmas isn't about gifts, mate. It's about time together as a family.
and drinking.
And drinking
heavily.
Well,
I've got a couple of great books.
I did get some gin, actually.
We're not interested in that. We moved on.
Well, it's all gone anyway. So
I've got a couple of great books. My sister, Lord Lover, bought me a book called...
Lord Lover. That's unusual, sister.
I call her sister, but she has changed over the years.
Should buy you a book on bagpipes.
So, my sister bought me a book called...
Stop it.
You can do it. You can do it. Come on.
So she bought me a book, How to Draw Maps. And this is a book called a bloke called, slightly improbably named, Jared Blando. But Jared, may your pen never run dry, because he's written this fantastic book about how to draw art maps for RPGs, for fantasy games, for war games.
Oh, great.
And it's a really easy step-by-step thing to follow. Now, people use maps for all sort of things, campaigns, scenarios and stuff like that. And I think, we always think, how do we make our maps look a little bit better? Well, Jared Blando has written this book, and it's about 15 quid. Because my sister never spends more than 20 quid on me. And this is a really fantastic looking book, and I can strongly recommend
What's she
it.
going to spend the other £5 on then? She's spent 15 on the
Bit
book.
of a
and
cheapskate. She doesn't really bother.
She'll pocket that.
That's right.
I don't think she'll ever be listening.
Yeah, she won't pay for the batteries for her wireless.
And if she is listening, this could be the last present. You
Sorry, Joe. Yeah, that's probably right. And I also got a really good book called To Walk in the Dark, Military Intelligence in the English Civil War. And this isn't just about spies and stuff like that. This is about reconnaissance and finding the enemy, and how you find the enemy in an age before people really knew, the sort of as much as they possibly might have known now about how to reconnoitre.
No Google.
You've got no Google, you've got no maps, you've got local knowledge. You kind of know where Coventry is, or Leicester, or York. How do you get there? Which roads do you use? How do you coordinate your forces?
Great North Road.
Well, possibly that's one route.
Or the M1.
Exactly. So those key roads are the arteries of warfare in that particular period. But when you don't have trained intelligence officers, how do you find out where the enemy is? How do you know if they're moving?
It's a very good point, and one in war games we
that.
often overlook, because we tend to furnish people with a lovely map, don't we? Regardless of the period we're playing. And actually, would they have had any access to anything like that?
Well, they're very likely, according to this book, to have accurate maps which go down to the sort of scale that we take for granted now. So, you're thinking about those sort of things, and there's maybe some war games, some campaigns to be designed about not having a map.
Kriegspiels, mate. Kriegspiels. Without a map.
There used to be a great Avalon Hill game back in the day called Scourge of the Nile. You started with the outline of Africa and you drew your map as your adventurers explorers went into the middle of Africa.
A Marauders map type thing.
Yeah. So those were both
Dr. Sydney, I presume.
I was with Sydney when he discovered the source of the Limpopo.
Absolutely.
And so
it's still aching now.
And the other thing, Sid, that strikes me about that is I know that map book is going to be very relevant for you, because
you can draw.
You can draw, and people won't know this, but I know this because I've had little glimpses of them. You keep you fastidiously keep diaries of what you've been doing with your gaming, with notes and little diagrams in it, and I have to say you should really think about
throwing them
leaving
away.
These to the nation after you've departed, because they're works of art. They are little works of art in their own right.
Well, one of the things that
make it look like a big girly, in my opinion.
That wouldn't be the first time, would it? One of the things which I think is great about being a wargamer is the friends you meet and the games you play and the environment in which you play them in.
Yeah.
And I found out over the years, I don't remember much of the gaming I did in my 20s, probably because A, it's a long time ago, B, most of us were slightly inebriated when we were doing it, and also the games just sort of fade. But over the years I've been trying to keep a diary of the games we play, and there's a few people who've inspired me. So Henry Hyde, hi Henry, he posted photos of the games that he'd been recording in his books. Also Barry Hilton took really some great sort of things online relating to unit histories he created for his forces for the Crimean War, League of Augsburg and stuff like that. And they were kind of inspiring me to sort of try and do that. And it's been a great thing to look back to. You've got the notebooks there, and you can the games you play, the people you've done it with. And also you try to record some of the details like the paints you've used in
Yeah,
respect to
yeah.
the figures. I'm always one of these people who paints half a unit and can never quite remember how I got the grey in the first half of
I'm
the
so
unit.
bad at that.
So keeping a notebook is a really good New Year's resolution.
Funnily enough, whilst I mocked you, I have workbooks. They always used to be the big black and red A4 books, but now I've moved on to these, what are these things called? Moleskins.
Yeah.
And I have got all of my workbooks going back about 30 years with any notes I've ever made, just any ideas, and I write them down religiously and then lose them. But I then find them years later, and then it is always interesting to go back and you think, oh, there's an idea there that I had then. I wonder what I could do with that. And it's a rather in your case they're very artistic and very well laid out. In my case, it's just a complete anarchic brain dump. But it is always worth going back and re-looking at some of those ideas, because there's stuff in there that you think, wow, that page there was the very genesis of, I don't know, the command dice in Chain of Command, or that page there was the writing of the very first article I had published in the 1980s. Yeah. And you think, oh, blimey, there's something inspirational from going back over that stuff that you can use again.
That's when I first stole that idea off Nick.
There's definitely nostalgia element to it, but also I think...
Not that I'm bitter and twisted.
One of the things we talked about is being distracted by other periods, sort of wargaming, butterfly syndrome. And I think sometimes if you do a small amount of work on something and you put it to one side, it's not as if you've dealt with it, but it's still there. You don't need to keep doing it. It doesn't need to be fresh in your mind. And that's something I find is if you start getting distracted, write about it, research it, paint a couple of figures and just leave them to one side and see whether you're as interested 6 months later.
So, and do your notebooks go back years then, Sid?
Yeah, about 10 years.
10 is nothing.
But they will be a work that will be the British Museum, probably.
There will be, probably alongside Churchill's vests.
I was going to say slippers. Well,
yes.
Well, we'll leave that bequest for the moment. And I think, looking back, it's a good idea as the year comes to an end and a new one looms before us. I thought we'd talk about a big issue with a difference.
Oh, a little issue.
Not an issue. It's a big issue, but with a difference, as I said. Looking back over 2018, and in particular, the laughter, the tears, the games, the books, the wargaming, and look forwards to 2019, where the hopes and fears of all the years are met in me tonight, whatever that means. So, Nick, let me start with you.
You know where your gin went, Richard. You're going to start with me.
2018. What was the best and what was the worst?
Well,
it was
the
best of years,
it was.
and it was the worst of years.
No, I think it probably was possibly one of the best of years, actually. 2018, when I look back on it.
Not an annus horribilis?
No, an annus top-notch.
Fantasticus.
It was a cracking year. I mean, it was the year we launched Water Tanker.
Oh.
So, even though it seems like it's been around for years, it was actually... Well, we took it to Salute, didn't we, the first time? So Water Tanker came out last year, and we took it to Belfast and played it with the Beast of War guys. We've been up and down the country playing it. Peterborough, and even exotic places like that. Tring. All over them. And
Edinburgh,
actually,
Exeter, and all points in between,
keep
mate.
going. Crisis.
That's not a place.
Oh no, Antwerp. Even. So a real year. It's been a real top tanking year in that regard.
Antwerp to Zambia.
The whole process, the whole excitement, actually, of Water Tanker coming out and being so well received, and hearing stories of people playing it with their families. One of the things that we didn't really think about when we put it out there was this idea that people were going to play it with their kids. People were going to really get their kids, and even blokes getting their son-in-laws and daughters to play it. It was a real unintended consequence. And actually, it's been a really, really fantastic journey to think, gosh, you know what? We created that and we put that out there, and it's been a...
Well, you did, mate. Really.
Well, it's been a really well received set of rules and a good game. And so I think for me, that's got to be the top pinnacle of what happened in 2018.
Can I ask, on a serious point, with Water Tanker, how did it feel to you to actually start a project and finish it?
Ooh. Yes. Well, I think the key thing for me is that because we've been down this road before, and it's a story, a journey that you talk about quite a lot. When you do take something through, you put effort into it to put it out there, and you know that actually there are going to be lots of people who first thing they say is tell you what's not in it, and what you've left out, and what hasn't. It doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. But with Water Tanker, because we've kept it so simple, actually, that's been fairly minimal. So sometimes you get. I know you talk about it. It's almost like a full postnatal depression. You give birth to this set of rules, and then you can get
somebody comes up and says your baby's ugly.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not. That's my baby.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how it feels to me. It really is.
And I've been there before with other sets of rules as well, so I know what that feels like. So I think with this year, Water Tanker, you're excited about it. You also prepare yourself for that to come your way. Yeah. And actually, with Water Tanker, we were very lucky. There was very little of that. Yeah. So I think it's been a real high. So to complete it and get it out there and enjoy it and spend the last year playing it.
It is interesting, and that does raise the big issue of is it true to say that the more text you put in a rule book, the better and more clear it is. I rather think sometimes it's the opposite way round, and one of the challenges that we have as game designers and publishers is that people will say, every I must be dotted and every T must be crossed, but sometimes adding more and more text simply can confuse these things, whereas I feel that what you achieved with Water Tanker was to present the rules in a very, very clear way and keep on message with what is really a system that could be written on 5 or 6 pages. The challenge then is to translate that into something that people can understand, but you are dotting as many I's and T's as possible. So it's
and it was also different to what we'd taken out before, wasn't it? It's very much a game. So you think, how will people receive this? People were very encouraging and excited about playing it and buying it before they didn't know what it was. Would they still retain that excitement after they got it?
That's
thankfully,
true, because,
they have.
Whilst we have a sort of image as people who like to have a laugh, as individuals, we also have a sort of corporate reputation as being very, very historical and with quite serious, if you like, games in terms of they pay a lot of attention to detail in terms of history. And when you produce something which is quite light-hearted, roustabout, fun set of rules, you do think, how's this going to go down? Are people going to go, you have betrayed the historical plausibility and whatever that is at the heart of Lard? Unfortunately, we did write it in big letters on the tin. This is what this is all about. I mean, you can't call a set of rules Water Tanker and and not be accused of trying to present it as a historical text. But that was very it was a great relief, to be honest with you.
But there have been other highlights as well. So there have been lots of games days this year. I mean, we went down to Penarth for the show down there. We've been to.
We didn't. We missed it this year.
We
accidentally got our dates crossed.
I'm sorry. I'm confusing my location. I'm thinking of Bristol.
I'm
thinking of Bristol when we went down there for a Water Tanker day at Bristol. With Devon Doom and the guys down there. We produced a little audio clip on the back of that as well. That was a fun day out. We've been, of course, all the Lardy events are all, excellent days out and evenings out in their own right. Evesham this year. So Evesham this year,
very good.
We had some fantastic games, greatly organised again by Aid. Lovely photo we have with everybody wearing their Burgundy t-shirts that so many of the guys wore for the day. I can't remember how many of us there were there, but upwards of 30 to 40 people probably.
More than 40.
And I went down to Exeter for Bob Connor's event, Clotted Lard. That was fantastic.
First time Lardy event, Clotted Lard. I did Harrogate, first time event, Ebor Lard, which was great. Of course, we went across to Chelmsford there as well, to Writtle, for a Writtle bit of Lard.
I missed
that. It's a very clever play on words, Big. For me, you carry on.
No, mate.
You carry on. I was just thinking about the shows we've done. I mean,
let's talk about those, because I was going to say about Partisan, you see, and Salute and Crisis and taking Water Tanker to
Trouser Fun at Partisan.
When Richard split his trousers at Partisan, that's
the
very memorable
PJ
moment.
Proby of wargaming. I bent over to put up the Lard banner on the trading stand to a loud rip. Fortunately, Marks and Spencer's in Newark opened at 10 o'clock, and my daughter was able to rush in and buy me a new pair of trousers. So it was certainly an enlightening experience.
Yeah, and again, Partizan, great show. Salute, so busy again. There's so for me, it was a real water tanker focus on all of those shows, and we did Selwig as well, of course, which I hadn't been to for many years.
No, I haven't been for years either. Actually, it's still very swimming pooly.
Yes, I've still got the smell of chlorine
In the morning.
in my nostrils, actually. And then I guess for me, so I'd say the Arnhem road trip was it was a real.
All the better because it was unplanned in a ridiculous way, having always told people do your planning, but
well, it was unplanned. I mean, I knew that I was going to be doing something there, so I guess I'd set up for that, which is great because it meant that we got a lot of the stuff already laid out and ready to whip out when we needed it.
Maybe that's
but
why I enjoyed it.
I think your ability to come at and squeeze the hours in was really great because it just added to that whole.
I think maybe that's
trip.
why I really enjoyed it because the bit that I had said that if I'm going to go that I would do the planning for was going to be what we did around Arnhem, and I presumed that we weren't going to go, especially Sid when you said you couldn't make it, and I thought, well, and I'm just so busy with getting stuff ready for Crisis, we're not going to. And then when Nick started throwing his toys about and having a tantrum, I said, look, all right, we will go. And I picked up the phone to Jasper Orthuis over in the Netherlands, whose family lived in Arnhem during the battle. And I said to him, listen, mate, I haven't done any planning for this. Can you show us around? And he very, very kindly got on the train, toot all the way to Arnhem. We picked him up at the station, and he did us a fantastic guided tour. What that guy doesn't know about Arnhem. It really isn't worth knowing. So Jasper from WSS and Caravanserai generally, a big shout out and thank you to him for that. And I'm actually
worth saying on that because of course we did the podcast as well about the Arnhem road trip, and actually Jasper's on that for about 10 seconds.
He was.
So from the outside you think that actually he was, it was just somebody we bumped into in a cafe.
He turned up on the street.
He had a much more
fancy meeting you here.
Yeah.
much more helpful part.
He was a key part of that, but we cut him out because I think my ego was much bigger than his role.
We couldn't afford his rates, just a mere cameo.
But I am going over to Utrecht actually in February
for Poldecon.
For Poldecon. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Jasper over there and giving him a big kiss to thank him for all the effort he put in there.
Give him one from me.
What an offer!
Yeah.
Well,
and then also, of course, we did a refight of Waterloo. Of course, where Richard played Napoleon and I played.
I couldn't escape if I wanted to.
No, and
it's a very memorable game with Dave
great.
Brown.
It was.
It was really good.
Yeah,
fighting an iconic game across a whole day with about 15 wargamers. That's a real experience. And
it was good fun.
One of the biggest games I think I've played in recent years. I mean, we used to do some really big ones back in the day, but that's probably one of the biggest ones we've done for a while.
Yeah, and lovely to play a big battle game, and of course we've droned on and on about that ever since as well. So that was really good, and of course the other thing for me and the highlights of a really busy year has been towards the back end of the year when I've been doing the online games, Kriegspiel games, using the Discord app and developing those as an idea. Partly wearing a hat of corporate strategic business wargaming to see how teams might interact in that environment. But also to think actually how can we use this to play Kriegspiels, and it's worked so far really well. We've had some really enjoyable games using that format, and I think there's more to come with that. I think it's got loads of potential.
I agree. I mean, Nick's been very much the admiral in charge of the fleet on that one, and my role has been pretty much that of a powder monkey. I've merely been a small cog, but it's been really interesting I always love Kriegspiel games. I mean, they're just, the dynamics are totally different and the experience is totally different to a figure game. And it's I wouldn't play one over and above the other, but the two are just complementary. And it's been really interesting to study the way people behave.
And one of the interesting things about these Discord games is that they are online games, so people, In the same way that a lot of RPGs have now moved over to Skype or Hangouts or one of the other sort of mediums for group play. Discord has also been an online platform, so you can get people in different time zones, people all over the world. Yeah. Obviously in different locations, sort of playing the same sort of game.
And that's the potential for this. And that's that. You know, we are big on community. You know, Lard is all about community of gamers, and we're very lucky that Lard reaches around the world. So wherever you go, there's people playing Lardy games, and we'd like to be able to embrace that and get those people together to play in some of these online games. So I'd like to make them bigger and more experimental as we go into the new year. One of the things we're looking forward to is how we do that. Yeah. And so, and to get more people involved in bigger games. It's there's no end to how big some of these games could get if you let them. And so it's, where do we set the limits? How's it going to work? What's going to work? And at what level can you retain the engagement of people and get them to play those games in a way that you can still keep control of it? It's going to be fascinating to see.
Very good. Excellent. Well, gentlemen, as the fire roars in the hearth and we've got the champagne on ice...
Well, hang on, because I've droned on about what I did last year. But, I didn't do a lot of the other stuff, Rich, that you did. I didn't go to Lard America and that kind of...
No, you didn't. No, I don't think they wanted you, actually. But,
Donald, let me go.
I went out to Historicon, which was fabulous, and Historicon itself was fabulous, but also the opportunity to see the leaps and bounds that Lard America has made over the last couple of years. I've always had this thing with the guys in the States who have been involved with Lard since the very, very outset. I mean, some of the guys who were out there, I think one of the first people ever on the TooFatLardies group who wasn't part of our club was actually from the Midwest, somewhere around Michigan, Missouri, somewhere beginning with an M. And lots of guys on there like John Gephardt in Arizona who are good friends. We've known them for years. But the issue always over in the States was that people would say, we've been to the convention and we really want to play your rules, but we never see any games on. And there were so many people saying this. You thought, somehow all we have to do is put these people in touch with each other and things will happen. Well, the guys out there with Lard America actually have really made huge efforts, and now Lard America are a prominent group on the HMGS circuit. There's some strange politics out there in that the HMGS organisers are not allowing any new clubs to register, so you can't say we're a new club when you're booking games. So they have to go through all sorts of leaping through hoops in order to try and register all the Lard America games to get them all together in the same area. But they're doing it, and what's happening is more and more people are realising, yes, there are people like me who are really enjoying playing Lardy rules, and and as a consequence, we're seeing the profile rising out there, and people are enjoying it. So it's great to see that that's been a complete turnaround there. And of course, it's always nice to go over to the States and eat very large amounts of food, which.
You can do that in this country.
I can do, but I have to order 2 dinners here, whereas over there I just order one, and I don't feel so embarrassed about it.
Chateaubriand for one.
So. Absolutely. So that was obviously regulars on the circuit. Evesham, Edinburgh as well. A deep fried lard in Edinburgh, always a highlight on my calendar. My liver actually tries to book leave every year that weekend. But
take your auxiliary liver.
Yeah, I take a spare liver with me, which is always great fun. But it's been good. What about you, Sid? You've been on the circuit this year?
I have been on the circuit a little bit. I've got to confess, my kids are still quite young, so I don't get out as much as you two guys do, which is a shame. But I've really enjoyed what I've done. I mean, I went to sort of Evesham and Salute, Crisis in Antwerp later in the year. But also had a really good day out in the other partisan with a good friend of the show, Mark Backhouse. The Siege of Portsmouth, 1642 in 2 mil.
Yeah.
And that was a really good thing, which was teaming up with somebody who's a friend, but not in the same geographical location, and then arranging a project. I think that's kind of one of the things wargamers are pretty good at. We have an idea, And if we're sharing the same idea, people meet often on the internet, through Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is, and then doing a project with somebody else. That's a different facet of the hobby that is a really rewarding one. You buy into somebody else's idea of a project, and you make some figures or some terrain, or in my case, did some ships for Mark's game. And that was a really enjoyable thing, which we probably wouldn't have done in the 1980s. We'd have been very much geographically limited to St Albans or Hatfield or wherever it was. But now, you meet up with somebody who's got similar ideas, and that's a really rewarding thing. And I definitely recommend that as being just a great thing to do. Whatever stripe of wargaming you're doing or role playing, it's just a great thing. Just doing something with somebody else, sharing the same sort of ideas, and that was a lot of fun.
I think this is one of the strong points of the internet. All it's done for the hobby is it's created one great big community, as opposed to where we were, as you say, 20, 30 years ago, where your wargaming community was the 10, 12, 15, 20 blokes at your local club, and that was it. And you'd go, oh look, there's a club from up the road, I didn't know they existed, let's not talk to them because we don't know them. Whereas now we know people from all over the globe, which is fabulous.
And of course with Mark as well, we did that Matrix.
I was going to mention
Roman game. You were going to mention that one. Okay, you mention it then, Sydney.
And I think so. There's an overlap between the Matrix gaming that we've done and also the Kriegspielen, which we've always done. And I think putting those together in an online format, and I know Mark and Guy as well, and Jasper on the WSS podcast with Angus, they've done a whole session on that, and people who are interested in that definitely should go and listen to that. It's a great it's a great podcast episode. But bringing people together and playing online games, but games which are still very much war games. They're not sort of role playing games, they're not sort of video games. I think that's an area of the hobby that I can only see growing. Once you've made a contact with somebody on a various sort of information group like Twitter or Facebook or whatever, going the next step and actually playing online, I think is a really interesting development. Certainly that Matrix game which we played, and I think there's about 5 or 6 of us who were online on Skype or Hangouts or whatever it was, that was a really interesting process. And I think
it was a good laugh as well.
It was very enjoyable. So that was a big highlight of the year, definitely for me. And I think also the other thing which I really enjoyed was the painting challenges I've done. Painting's quite a solitary activity in a number of ways, but actually painting in a community with other people has really helped me sort of focus the efforts that I've got. And that's been a big development, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of measure progress in painting and acquiring new things by the number of really useful boxes I have to buy. And certainly of late I've been buying lots of really useful boxes. So that's that. Well, I'd say it's a good time.
They are addictive.
My wife doesn't think that, funnily enough. But they are very useful. They're
really useful.
That's the name of the test. So that's 2018. What are we going to be looking at in 2019? What have we got?
Mainly the pillow for the next period, I think.
I know there's various sort of projects that we've been working on. What sort of things are we
going to do? More of that Kriegspiel online Discord, because we want to. As I said, they've got loads of possibilities. Really no idea where that's going to take us, but it's going to be a fun journey, for sure.
A lot of chain of command for me. Obviously working on the next handbook, but also working on pint-sized campaigns and working on the Arnhem supplement. I don't know whether the term supplement is what we're going to use, but that's going to be different to the handbooks, but complementary. And I'm just looking forward to playing those actions through, because one of the things that's really interesting me is the variable quality of the troops that are involved.
On both sides?
On both sides, yeah. We talked about on the last Oddcast, but one, where we were reassessing and evaluating how we represent British Barrows. But also the Germans, by that stage of the war, are coming out with such mixed bags of formations. It's just really interesting challenge to replicate the way those troops fought. And so that's going to be just interesting games to play. Chain of Command has got a big place for me in 2019, and I've also starting to dabble, figures just coming through now, for the Sharp Practice Ancients game that I'm keen to work with, to see if it works. Basically, it's one of those things that, as I look at it, I think either this will work or it won't work.
Kind of a binary.
It's deep, man.
It is.
Yeah, it's deep.
It's deep thinking.
There.
I know.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what will it be?
Well, that is in itself a very big issue.
It is really. In a way, it will be like going up that mountain, and when I come down, what will be on the tablets? It won't be. I won't need 10 of them. It will be yes or no.
I sometimes think you are on the tablets.
I think from my perspective for next year, it's also it's a story. You know about this, Sid. It's how little things can stimulate you. So I've got some.
Well, you've had the Christmas gift.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's probably worn the batteries out.
I thought he was sitting strangely.
He's still buzzing. The way the chair's vibrating. Anyway, so what was I going to say?
Little things.
Little things. So, for instance, I've got some Welsh Jeff, who seems to get a shout out in every single
Quite
podcast.
rightly so.
Not just ours, but everybody else's.
Yeah.
So, hello, Jeff.
In Wales.
In Wales, he very kindly made me some lovely flight stands for Bag the Hun. So that has made me get my aeroplanes out again and play a bit more Bag the Hun. You, Sydney, with your lovely map that you gave me for Christmas,
Yes.
I've got my boats out again. So it's little things can allow you to reopen something and get some more enjoyment out of it. So I'm really looking forward to doing a bit of that too. Are you going to be doing more 2mm next year?
Yeah, I'm going to be doing more 2mm during the course of 2019. So there's the Nordlingen game, which I'm kind of ready to go with. And also I've been doing more on the 8 Years' War, the later stage of the 8 Years' War, which is very siege-based. And again with Mark, we've been looking at ways in which we can actually do a siege game in 2mm, which I think is one of those things that you sort of tend to think, oh God, that can't be very interesting. But, so many ancient, medieval, early modern actions was based around sieges. So I think we've got high hopes of that. I'm also looking to try and reinvigorate the blog that I've had for some time. And you've probably seen things over Christmas and New Year on that. But that's a way in which I think you can look at a different media to try and develop the hobby. And there's been some sort of chat on Twitter, certainly with our good friend in Madrid, Benito, about whether there's really a role for blogs. And I think there is. I think there's a definite role for blogs going forward. So that's one of the things I really want to do over the course of 2019, develop that more. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? This whole podcast thing as well, when it comes to blogs and podcasts. I mean, I've massively enjoyed doing our podcasts. They've been good fun, but I've hugely enjoyed discovering during 2018 the WSS podcast, which I was unaware of until sort of halfway through the year. And those guys do, I love it. They do a fantastic short podcast, which is brilliant. Meeples, of course, reinvented itself in 2018. And, we're still enjoying listening to Neil and Mike and their guest presenters. Great for painting, or great for long car journeys, or very long car journeys if you're going to have a podcast with Henry in it. And of course Henry is doing his Patreon sessions that and producing stuff on that. Really interested to see where he goes with that, and interested in listening to those. The Veteran Wargamer with Jay in the States, another really good podcast. Mike Whitaker's own, Trouble at Mill. Yeah, there's so many excellent audio things out there to keep you company whilst you're painting and enjoying your hobby. Yeah, I listen to them a lot in the car. There's so many there, and I think they help keep your energy up for gaming.
I think that's right, and I think there's also, it's not just wargaming podcasts. There's a lot of excellent role-playing game podcasts which, bring back a lot of the ideas about how to game in a group scenario. So
I'm unaware of lots of those.
Well, there's a great podcast called The Smart Party. There's another one called The Grognard Files. There's also things like Ken and Robin talk about stuff. These are role-playing podcasts, but they're all about groups of people interacting in a game environment. Yeah. And they've got a lot to talk about how people interact, objectives within games, time limits within games, how to stimulate old games. So there's a lot of crossovers between the different branches of the hobby, wargaming and role-playing. They're not that far apart. All of us have probably done both at some time. Role-playing probably grew out of wargaming back with Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. So there's lots there that I think you can port over to wargaming, especially when you're thinking about wargaming, as we talked about previously in the other episode, about different objectives within a game. You know, some can be macro as regards the sort of tabletop battle, some can be more personal as regards the objective of a particular commander. So learning things from different branches of a broader hobby, I think, can be something which really brings a lot of depth and a lot of context. And again, they're just as good to listen to when you're painting.
And it'll be interesting to see how all of that shapes what goes on in the community. Where's the movement going to be? Are we going to be going to smaller level games, larger level games? What's going to be happening? It'd be interesting to take ourselves forward in time to this time next year and see what 2019 has given us.
Well, do you know, mate, let's hope we can do that at the end of next year. But we're going to cut through all this jibber-jabber now and ask 3 pertinent questions. Best game of 2018, best book, and the most inspiring wargaming thing that you did. So, Nicholas, best game.
Best game is the Discord games that I've been doing lately online with the guys.
Right, that's enough.
Krieg spills.
Lovely, great. Sydney, best game.
Waterloo.
Couldn't, yeah, absolutely had to be in many ways. I think that's probably going to be up there on all our lists. For me, best game I played, Foy at Evesham, that Band of Brothers scenario. Alan, Big Al Sherwood doing a fantastic job modelling that.
Yeah.
But a game that I didn't play in, Ed Leland's Eastern Front game at Historicon. How I avoided playing that, I have no idea, because I said to Ed, I've got to play in this game, and then
You have to go back.
I may have been in a ditch somewhere or something.
In your time machine.
Yeah, but there we go. Great, got to be mentioned. Right, best book, Nicholas.
The Then and Now books on Arnhem.
Books?
The two. Well,
Right.
They're a box set of 2 books, aren't they?
Set.
I can't remember the guy who wrote them now. He's got a Eastern European name. But they're fantastic
Starling?
books. No, I can't remember his name. I've done him. We did him in one of the podcasts as a
Right.
book choice.
we
So
did.
they're my books of the year.
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
from the After the Battle series, isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah,
Yep.
right. Okay, Sydney, best book of the year.
A terrific book called The Business of War by David Parrott, which we've not talked about on the podcast, but we may do next time.
Ah, well, always interested to hear what.
And I'm going to add a book which is The Art of Action by Stephen Bungay, which is also read this year.
Yeah,
which is
do you know what?
fantastic. I can have 2 because I'm bigger than you.
You can't have 2 because I'm going to have 2.
Well, if you're going to have
No,
two as
you can't
well.
have 2 because your big colouring book doesn't count, Sydney. Right, Battle for Ginkle Heath near Ede.
Crinkle who?
Ginkle Heath
Heath.
near Ede. It's Edward Heath's uncle. Not. Right, this is a book I picked up at the Hartenstein Hotel Museum in Arnhem, and we went to the Ginkle Heath when we were there. We met up there with Jasper, and I just really liked it because I bought it at a really important place at the final destination of our journey. But also, it's one of those books that doesn't say, hey, look, big book about Arnhem. It says, I'm taking a tiny, tiny little piece of the Battle for Arnhem and showing how it was an interesting fight in its own way. And that is, for me, is some of the best books do that. The second one, I have to mention this, German Fallschirmtruppe, 1936 to 41, and in a snappy subtitle, it's Genesis and employment in the first campaigns of the Wehrmacht. The reason I say this book is I had endless problems getting details on Fallschirmjäger operations in Holland in 1940 and looking at organisation of Fallschirmjäger troops. And this geezer, Karl-Heinz Goller, who joined the Fallschirmjäger and the Bundeswehr in 1958 and went through as a platoon leader and company commander, then on to the general staff, was a guy who has really done his research from prime German sources, and when writing the 1940 campaign handbook, this was the book that got me over the final hurdle in terms of getting the organisation details that I needed, and is also a great read, you know, if you're interested in Crete as well, 1941. So that's our 2 books. And Nicholas, most inspiring event of the year, apart from seeing Sid in pantomime at Real.
Well, I'm gonna have 2 then because I can. So
No, you
yes,
can't.
I am. I'm gonna have 2, right?
Oh.
And so I'm gonna say I was really inspired by Phil and Jenny's game at Exeter when they put on the Belgian chain of command Okay.
Yeah.
And the terrain on that table was absolutely beautiful, and that is what said to me, actually, you know what, I need to do more with my own terrain.
Yeah,
so that's inspired me to do all the kind of stuff I've been doing lately.
Their games are always stunning, and it is the attention to detail that makes the difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Grabbers.
Hang on, I'm finished yet. That's my first one. And of course, the second most inspiring thing, Richard, as ever, was sharing time in the car with you for 4 days, but more importantly, getting out of the car and doing the stuff we did in Arnhem, and that road trip from Joe's Bridge right up to Arnhem, which was a kind of life bucket list thing for me. So that's really inspired me to do more about Market Garden.
Very good. I think mine's probably
bit of gardening for you.
No, mine's Operation Market Larden in Evesham, because I think seeing where that's developed over the years from being just a sort of cluster of people just turning up at Evesham to really sort of 45 almost uniformed wargamers in their burgundy polo shirts.
In a way, it's the Nuremberg Rally of Lard, isn't it?
I like to
Oh my God!
I don't think that's quite right. But that was very inspiring, and that's a huge tribute to Aid and Mrs. and Patsy. I think it's Patsy and Connor and.
You love to see serried ranks of men in uniform, don't you?
I think we can move on from that.
Moving swiftly on.
Yeah, well, thank you to Aid for that.
So that was certainly very
brilliant job.
And thank you to everyone who's hosted live.
Well, and especially as Aid was really the Steve Austin of wargaming at that point.
A man barely alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Who risked his life for Lard. We could write a country and western song about that. It would be brilliant.
Well, he's got the beard.
And the chicken.
He's the Kenny Rogers of wargaming.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to come out with something slightly different. Battlefield walking. Obviously, we did Arnhem, but I also did some battlefield walking with my wife in Poland.
Hey.
Wow.
Yeah, we were out there for a wedding, and there was many years ago I wrote an article on some fighting in Pomerania. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go there and have a look at these battlefields.
Liz must have been
delighted. She was bored shitless, to use an expression that I probably shouldn't use on a podcast.
No worse than that.
No, well, in its favour, the weather was beautifully sunny, and the countryside was wonderful. So it was a bit of a walk in the lovely countryside, and she did find it quite interesting. She said, "This is a bit like." This is a bit like detective work, looking to find what you're looking for. I said, yeah, and we did find what we were looking for, and we even found a little dug-in position for an anti-tank gun that was there.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is that why you were wearing that deerstalker hat?
Yeah, well, that's right. And the lederhosen. But, yeah, so that was really, really interesting, because I'd written about this, about 4 or 5 different actions, all of which took place within 10-15 miles, and we went back there and looked at that, and funnily enough, whilst you can go to Holland and find that Eindhoven has grown to the point where everything is built over, you go to Poland and not everything is built over because of the time that they spent with obviously being part of the Soviet bloc. Not a lot of money was spent there in terms of investment, and these places are as they were, almost exactly as they were in 1945 in terms of the geography. Obviously,
there's nothing quite like a battlefield which you're going to, and it is unaltered. Whether it's Culloden or somewhere in Pomerania. It's really very special.
That for me was good. That was good, and it was lovely weather and
good wedding and a good booze up.
Great wedding,
by all accounts.
An alarming booze up. A Polish wedding is an experience that you don't really want to do too often.
Well, maybe we can almost rival that, because as the fire is roaring in the hearth,
and your chestnuts are roasting.
My chestnuts are definitely roasted.
Throw your
and we
have
have
on it.
a large amount of champagne on ice. I think it's probably about time.
Nice.
I'll do the honours, Sydney. I'll do the honours.
So let's all raise a glass to the new year, to 2019. As I am going to walk over to the piano.
Oh, not again.
I've been practising to join Roger and the band.
Hello,
Take
Roger.
my seat at the piano, and we're going to sign out. Wish you all a very happy new year from me to you, wherever you may be, or indeed are, on this very special night. Roger, let's do it.
Right on.